When you finally decide to upgrade your living room sound system, the temptation is to go for the cheapest floor-standing pair you can find on a flash sale site. I've seen too many friends pull the plug on a budget set, only to discover weeks later that their movies sound flat, their music feels like it's coming from a tin can, and the whole experience leaves them wishing they'd spent a little more. The regret is real, and it's why I'm a little more cautious when I talk about bigger-ticket home theater bundles. Does the Klipsch RP8000 FII 5.0 system feel like a smarter buy, or is it just another pricey lineup that will sit unused once the novelty wears off? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the hesitation most of us feel when a $2,000 plus audio package shows up on our radar. The biggest worries are threefold. Will the speakers actually fill the room the way the specs promise? Do they blend well together out of the box? And will the extra spending translate into noticeable everyday enjoyment rather than just a brag-worthy spec sheet? I've spent the past couple of weeks setting up the RP8000 FII floor standers, the RP504 CII center channel, and the RP502 SII surrounds in a standard 30 square meter family room. My goal was to see how they perform not just in a controlled audiophile listening session, but during the kinds of moments most households actually experience: weekend movie marathons, a Saturday night gaming session, and a Sunday morning playlist of jazz and folk. The floor-standing RP8000 FII speakers immediately demand attention when you first plug them in. Their 8-inch woofers, paired with a 1-inch compression driver, produce a bass that feels more like a gentle push than a rumble, and the highs remain crisp without the harshness you sometimes hear on less refined budget models. In a practical sense, this means a family movie night with a deep-voiced blockbuster like Mission Impossible yields that satisfying low-end thump that makes you feel the on-screen explosions, while dialogue never gets lost behind the action. That's a big win for anyone who has struggled with dialogues getting buried under high-energy soundtracks. The center channel, RP504 CII, is where the system really starts to gel. Most people assume the center will be the fallback speaker, but here the Klipsch design actually places the tweeter and mid-range drivers on a single coaxial axis, delivering a tight, focused voice that anchors the soundstage. In real-world use, when I switched from a basic TV's built-in speaker to this center unit, the change was night and day. Even at moderate volume levels, the vocal presence was clear enough that my teenage son stopped asking me to turn the TV volume up for his friends' jokes. If you're the type who watches a lot of dialogue-heavy dramas or enjoys gaming with chat coming through the game's voice channel, this center speaker will save you from constantly tweaking volume levels. Moving to the surround speakers, the RP502 SII are compact enough to sit on a bookshelf or mount on the side walls without looking out of place. Their 5-inch woofers and 1-inch tweeters try to balance size with immersion, and in a test with a surround-enabled game, the directional cues felt precise. The subtle shift when a helicopter flies overhead or when a character walks past you on the left was enough to make the room feel wider without the need for massive sidewall speakers. However, there's a hidden trade-off. Because these surrounds aren't as large as full-range floor standers, they can struggle with deep bass transitions in a home theater sequence that heavily relies on low-frequency effects. I found myself relying more on the main floor speakers for those moments, which isn't necessarily a deal-breaker, but is something to keep in mind if you plan to use the system for an action-heavy cinema experience. Now let's get into the practical strengths that matter after the purchase. First, the system's overall level matching is surprisingly intuitive. After the initial placement and basic calibration, nothing more elaborate than a 2-meter wall bounce test. You can walk around the room and adjust the main volume, everything stays balanced. That's a real time saver compared with other high-end bundles where you end up fine-tuning each speaker individually for weeks. Second, the Klipsch Cerametallic tweeter technology, which is a hybrid of ceramic and metal materials, actually holds up in a family setting. There's no noticeable degradation after a few weeks of movies, music, and the occasional dog bark. Finally, the aesthetic of the ebony finish gives the bundle a sleek, almost cinematic look that blends well with both dark and light interior decor, an often overlooked factor for those who care about how the gear looks as much as how it sounds. On the flip side, the system isn't without practical weaknesses. The biggest is the power requirement. The RP8000 FII's dynamic range means they can demand up to 140 watts per speaker at full blast, so you'll need a solid AV receiver that can deliver at least 300 watts per channel to avoid clipping. If you're currently using an entry-level receiver, you'll likely need to upgrade, which adds to the total cost. Another downside is the size.